Penny Adams. And from Kaduna on Saturday, Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, set the tone for the conference, emphasizing the importance of constructive dialogue in democracy. Stay tuned to the conversation on this critical issue.
What is the essence of this event? Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we are here because we recognize the rights of citizens to have a say, to ask questions, and to join in conversations of what concerns them. That is why we are here today. It is in the light of this that we saw the responsibility to provide this credible, professional platform for citizens to engage with government on this issue of tax reforms. We have done research, we have followed up, we have engaged, and we can really predict that unless we all sit down as we are sitting down today to discuss this matter, people may not understand where government is going. And then government may not understand the intentions of the citizens. So this is why we have provided this platform as a credible avenue for us to ventilate our views across board, to listen to what this tax reform is all about, and then to take input from the public. And we're very delighted, really, that the Minister of Information, with the full weight of the ministry, accepted to chair this event. I am aware that the minister and the ministry is arranging to take programs like this around the country to engage more Nigerians. I want to tell the Honorable Minister that we are not just willing to partner with you in Kaduna, we are willing to go around the country with you.
Very distinguished ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we make welcome the chairman of the occasion, Mohammed Idris, fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, Honorable Minister, Information and National Orientation. I believe our hands can be louder than that.
The theme today, tax reform, the role of public relations in fostering constructive dialogue for national economic renaissance, has brought to the fore, yet again, the place of constructive dialogue as a vital pillar of our democracy. Society advances by mutually respectful engagements, where we give voice to diverse opinions and respect those who we disagree with. We will certainly not always agree on all issues, perhaps not even on most issues, but we will always be guided by the fact that things that unite us, that is our common humanity, our nationhood, and our sense of patriotism, our collective vision for Nigeria that works for all, will always be more important and more meaningful than the differences of age, of religion, of region, ideology, gender, culture, or even social class. The topic today before us is a very sensitive and yet very important one. We can't escape but discuss this very important topic, taxation. It was the American statesman Benjamin Franklin who famously said that in this world today, nothing is certain except death and taxes. All over the world, effective taxation is important as a source of financial power for governments to provide social services for their citizens. However, there is plenty of reason to believe and assert that Nigeria's tax administration system has become long overdue for reform on account of design and implementation flaws, as well as the general attitude of taxpayers towards taxation itself. In the light of this, the ongoing review of the country's tax laws and realities is not just timely, but it is also crucial, especially as part of a larger set of macroeconomic reforms aimed at setting the country on an irreversible path of growth and development. The full details of the new tax bills are available and they are already in the public domain. Therefore, I may not take time to go over them here. But one must commend the effort so far being put together for the public engagement in this direction. What I would say is that it is very inspiring and heartwarming to see Nigerians from all walks of life coming out to express their views and opinions on these matters of critical national importance. As such, it is the very essence and the meaning of democracy itself. In spite of the challenge of trust deficit that tends to crop up around matters of governance in Nigeria, we have still been able to have what can be adjudged as a robust debate on this very sensitive national issue. President Tinubu has also been very clear that the executive will listen to and work with all stakeholders to ensure that all concerns are duly and comprehensively addressed. We will continue to ensure open lines of communication and engagement with the National Assembly, as the President has always said, and indeed other stakeholders. We are all in this together as one people, one nation, and just as we are being called upon to make collective sacrifices, we will also collectively reap the abundant social and economic benefits of all these necessary reforms. President Tinubu will always uphold the interests of all Nigerians, wherever they are, in this reform agenda that he has embarked upon for our great nation. The current mandate and responsibility that we have for governing and reforming Nigeria at this time came by way of democracy and will continue to live up to those very high democratic standards and expectations. The president himself is a true Democrat and will not do anything that will undermine democracy in this country.
The government said we are not going to tax capital, but we tax profits or returns. So one of the things that is in the bill is to ensure that to eliminate minimum tax for loss-making companies. What we have presently, if you are a company in Nigeria, whether you make profits or not, you will pay tax. If you make profit, you pay tax on the profit. If you make loss, you pay tax on your capital. So if we are taxing your capital, what will likely happen? The business will go under. So now we are not going to tax capital under this bill. Rather, we tax only profits. And those that are making that profit, they will have a minimum tax, which is 15% of their effective tax rate, 15% effective tax rate. The next thing that is in this Nigerian tax bill is that some expenses are going to be disallowable. You know, some people will not pay VAT on an expense, and they go to income tax. And you know, one of the things I said before, the fact that before, yes, we were trying to deploy technology, but now I said we are going to deploy under this bill. Technology will be deployed fully. So it will ensure that if you don't pay value-added tax on an item or an expense, that item cannot find its way back into your company income tax for you to deduct it as expenses. So if you are going to deduct an expense, VAT must have been paid on that expense, and custom duties must have been paid on that expense. Then it's also one of the things to encourage companies, non-residents, to work in Nigeria. Non-residents under this bill will be encouraged to work in Nigeria. For instance, because of the way technology is now, digitalization, it's possible to sit in Nigeria and work abroad. We even have them so many now presently in Nigeria. We have so many of our brothers, our youth, that are here in Nigeria and working abroad. So if you are a non-resident, this encourages that if you are our resident, you pay tax. But if you are a non-resident and you are not performing the duty of your employment in Nigeria, we will not pay tax under the law. Then the next one is the reduction of company income tax rates. We know presently the company income tax rate is 30%. This bill will ensure that within 2 years, the rate is come down to 25%. There is also introduction of development levy of 4%. So this is the issue with development levy of 4%. In our existing law, I said we have so many laws. We have some taxes that are called earmarked taxes. When we set up an agency, we say company, pay tax on those. If we set up another company, another agency, companies pay tax. So what has happened is this development levy will consolidate all those taxes. Instead of asking businesses, pay this, pay this, pay this, pay this, pay this, and they have to comply with the rules in respect of all of them, filing returns on all of them. Now they have been consolidated into one, which is 4% development levy, which will be shared among those agencies. And that development levy will reduce to 2% by 2030. Then one of the things, under the present law, our law says you should pay tax as a Nigerian resident on your worldwide income. So if you make income anywhere in the world, as our resident, you will pay tax. The other country where you have made income from, we say, you have made income from my country, you will pay tax. What is the implication? You are paying tax twice. So what this law, these bills, one of the provisions now is that to provide for elimination of double taxation. So if you pay tax abroad and you are paying tax here, the tax you have paid abroad, we will remove it from the tax you have paid here as long as you have declared the income. So if you declare the income here and that income is subject to tax here, we remove the tax you have paid abroad on that income to arrive at the tax you are going to pay in Nigeria. That's another thing is in this bill to encourage businesses. Another thing is zero VAT on exports. And another thing is VAT exemption for consumer goods. So presently, yes, there are some items that are exempted from VAT, but the producers of those items are not exempt. For instance, education is exempt, but schools are not exempt. So what means is that even if I say your education is exempt and the school pay VAT, what will the school likely do? They will, because they are not Father Christmas, they will shift the VAT to you. So what we have in this bill now is that education is exempt, medical is exempt, food is exempt, rent is exempt, public share transportation is exempt. So at the end of the day, in fact, what the committee has worked on is that for a normal person, normal Nigerian, don't let me use the word poor, normal Nigerian, you, based on the record of statistics from Nigerian Bureau of Statistics, it says that 83% of income of normal, ordinary Nigeria is spent on those things I have mentioned. The food, the education, the shelter, 83% of your income are spent on those things. So what the law has said now, that 83% will be exempt from VAT.
I thank the government for two things. One, stimulating a national discourse, which for a long time Nigerians are only made to swallow whatever the government wants. So this is a very positive thing. Secondly, reforms. It's not only in tax we need reforms. I think there is no sector of Nigeria that doesn't need reform.
But I want to encourage Nigerians that the debate about tax and tax reform should be centered on more about how it affects people than dividing people on other regional line, religious line, or whatever line. I think this is where we are getting so many of these issues wrong. When you are telling me that tax reform is because it is anti-North, and I ask myself, am I not a Northerner? I understand tax, and there's nothing about tax that affects me as a Northerner alone, but tax for Nigerians. We must begin to speak about Nigerians as Nigerians, not about regional people. If not, our progress will be deterred.
The bill is designed professionally, and like any other profession, finance and tax have their own professional jargons. So these professional jargons should be defined in a law language that everybody would understand.
Nobody would have a problem with fixing multiple taxation. So there are a lot of things, even though some of us are illiterate when it comes to taxation, there are a lot of issues with the tax reform bill that are good and they seem well-intentioned. So it behoves on us not to want to throw the baby with the bath water. Let us be educated about the entirety of the bill so that even if it is cherry picking, you can cherry pick and you can criticize.
The benefits are many, and I believe Nigerians will get to see these benefits. My concern are the controversies raised. For instance, now the development levy, if you look at it, 2024 covers development levy, which is imposed on the accessible profit of all companies chargeable to tax under Chapter 2 and 3 of the bill. So currently, based on Third Fund Act 2011, NICTA Act 2007, and Naseni Act, Cap 3 2004 as amended, 3% tertiary education tax to Third Fund, 1% of PBT of banks and other organizations. In the long run, the Third Fund will be removed by 2030.
There is a philosophical saying that a fine is a tax you pay for doing something wrong, and a tax is a fine you pay for doing something right. The reforms is about Nigeria, is about our future, is about our economy, is about our well-being, is about our lives. What I want us to understand is this is the first time in the history of Nigeria where a bold and courageous attempt is made to reconfigure, reset, and rearrange Nigeria's economy that has been parasitic, dormant, and docile. We have been told that this is the giant of Africa, but where lies our economy? Kaduna is a state today that is counted among those with the highest IGR, unlike in the past 8 years, where people are extorted. You can see the level of freedom, of liberty, of unity between Muslims and Christians, and of business activity thriving in the state from 29th of May 2023 to date. These are realities you can see.
Let me go to Professor Okay. I hear in the professor's presentation to the effect that 2 key institutions will be scrapped. And I know, sir, you have studied this bill since the time when it was presented to the National Assembly, and you have studied extensively and you have written extensively. Sir, I would like you to address that issue, because this is an important forum for us to go with an informed position, not misrepresentation or misinformation. And then you make your other interventions quickly in 5 minutes, sir, then we can continue. In 3 minutes, sorry.
Thank you very much. I'd like to first start by congratulating the minister. This is an institutional approach to public communication. Stakeholders are here. I don't know of many ministers who will dare to chair an occasion when there's controversy. Please, let's clap for this type of minister. The second thing is for us to know that every policy of government is intended to address some public good. Now, in the crafting of that policy, nobody is perfect. The policy came out, and I'm glad, Prof, I'll still make a comment on some of the issues you raised. You really brought it home to all of us. So if there are issues and you don't talk about it, controversy multiplies. What I say emerging from this engagement, as brief as it is a growing consensus. Am I correct? Am I correct? He's been demystified, so I thought I should place that on the table. Now, concerning ETF, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Nasenia, and the rest of them, they will simply be migrated to direct funding. So the question of dispatch, what do you call it? Scrapping. Prof, you're going away. My conversation is with you. Those who think you should sit down, say aye. Prof, you're not going anywhere. The ayes have it. But let's also approach the institutions. You remember the PTF? PTF was a consumption tax on petrol, isn't it? And it was put aside to be used for infrastructure. Tertiary education transfer arose when the crisis of funding of tertiary education became an issue. But you will have noticed that over time, all sorts of things are funded from there. Am I correct, Prof? Even as well, you, Professor, you are angry like me. There is no longer a tertiary education trust fund. Now, all over the world, states are shrinking. The camera I'm holding here is a TV camera, is a clock, is a lot of things. Miniaturization. So instead of expanding institutions, you begin to shrink them. Now, if tertiary education trust fund is to be a budget and funded platform, assisting from you see, when you have a single access point for development funding that comes from such taxation, it becomes a question of who is entitled, whose name will be on that list. Am I correct? So nothing is really lost in that context.
The lead paper presenter had cleared a lot of doubts in the minds of majority of us seated here that this tax reform is something we should embrace. And why should we embrace it? It is because of what it will eventually bring to the table, which includes better livelihoods for every Nigerian. And it's just that the journey towards better livelihoods is usually a tough one. And this is going to be tough at the beginning, but will eventually deliver good governance. However, there's the need to engage in public relations through dialogue. It's very important that we understand that the common Nigerian does not trust government.
Let me tell you, there is no reform, good reform, that does not face opposition. When the late Obafemi Awolowo wanted to introduce free education in the West, my brother Sunday Dare is here. It's a historical fact. The farmers in the Southwest opposed it. They opposed it on the grounds that first, he will tax them for education, and secondly, he will withdraw their farm hands from the land and take them to school. Today, those farm hands that were withdrawn from the farm and taken to school, are they better off or they are not better off? In the north here, I give you an example. When the northern Nigerian government wanted to introduce chemical fertilizer, the fertilizer we now fight about today, the first year that fertilizer was brought, urea burnt some crops. People said they never wanted fertilizer. The white man that went to preach about fertilizer was almost stoned where he went. Gradually, people were made to understand that fertilizer is of value to them. Today, fertilizer is a political weapon. If you are a senator and you don't share fertilizer, then you have not been a good senator. So please, I want us to understand something. These reforms are supposed to improve our lives and livelihoods. We are the ones that will make them work for us, or we are the ones that will continue to oppose them and they don't work for us.
It's quite clear that there is nothing wrong and there is nothing to fear about this tax reform. And it is my hope that at the end of the day, we all will see the benefit of it. Thank you very much once again.
It's just the beginning of the real awakening that is going to happen. We'll talk more and more, do and more conversations and engagement for the benefit of our country.
Now, listening to the speakers like the Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, and Senator Shehu Sani, among notable clerics, traditional leaders, civil society organizations, the academia, the public relations practitioners, all endorsing the process of reforming tax laws and administration in the country. The takeaways for me is the robust debate and citizens' engagement that is accommodating all views, demonstrating the essence of democracy. And in all, it is all about making Nigeria's economy more competitive, attractive to investors, and beneficial to citizens in a fair and transparent manner. The conversation continues. Be a part of it, and thanks for watching.
This is the network service of the NTA.